Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Welcome to our session today on planning. So I encourage you as we go through the session, if you've got any questions that relate specifically to your business, feel free to post them in the chat. And I'll do my best to answer as many questions as possible. Also, what I've done is I've gone through some of the questions that I typically get asked by small business owners, and I've put those on the slide, and I will answer them as I go along. But my main objective this afternoon is to help you, try and answer some of the challenges you may be going through. For those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Andrew Patricio, and I've always been a business owner. But for the last 25 years, I've been educating, training, and trying to inspire business owners through some of my seminars, my webinars, and working with business owners one-on-one. And one of the things that I've realized is that, firstly, running a business is very challenging. But secondly, when we're disorganized or we don't have a structure, we don't have a plan, it makes it even more difficult. So I like to encourage business owners, to plan just a few, a little bit of detail, for example, on a daily basis, plan your day. On a weekly basis, plan your week, create a marketing plan for your business, maybe a sales plan for your business, update your business plan annually. And this really helps you keep focused and on track. And, I think the more you can spend time planning, the better it is for you. There's those 7 habits of highly effective people. I don't know if anybody ever read the book or at least looked at the habits. And one of the habits that he speaks about is about sharpening the saw. And really it's about, getting yourself prepared, getting yourself ready so that you can do the things that you need to do. And I find that often one of the biggest challenges we have as small business is we haven't planned these things through. I'll give you a very good example. It's tax season. In the next few weeks, if your accountant hasn't done it already, they're going to contact you. They're going to ask you about your numbers and your invoices and your receipts for the last 12 months. And if you're an organized person, you've got it. You've planned in advance. You've kept everything in order. You have the information available. You're going to send it through your accountant, and it's going to create far less stress for you. If you haven't done this, then you have to go through this whole process of looking for information in the last minute. And I think it's going to be really, really frustrating. But let's go through some of the questions that business owners ask and some of the questions that you should be asking yourself on a regular basis. So firstly, why should we be planning? And I think the key is, if you think of business plans, if you think of that sample that I showed you on Tuesday of the marketing plan or the very simple one-page business plan, really the planning process, helps you create a roadmap. And I want you to think about it like this. You're going on a trip, you've decided you're driving, I don't know, wherever you're driving. For example, I'm going to Rome and Spain, and Italy next month, actually in May, not next month. And I know where the destination is. What I need to do now is work on all the details. How am I going to get there? And I think this is the same thing in business, is that once we've got a goal, let's say, for example, our goal this year is to do $100,000 in revenue. What are the steps that we need to take to achieve it? And this is why I think planning is so important. It gives you a roadmap, it gives you direction, it gives you things to focus on. And whatever you're doing in your business, and even in your personal life, I really think it pays to plan. Otherwise, you have this chaos going on around you, which could have a real big impact on, first of all, your mental health, and also on the success of what you're doing, finishing projects on time and things like that. So one of the first things we work on, and we discussed this on Tuesday, is the importance of your business vision. And it's really interesting, even as a business that's been around for a long time, I've been reflecting on that over the last few days. On my morning walks, I usually go for a walk every morning, and I went for a walk this morning, and I was thinking about, what direction do I want my business to go in now? And in my personal life, what direction do I want my life to go in? And one of the best exercises for you to do is to use your imagination. And what happens when we use our imagination is we dream up different scenarios. Well, I do anyway. So I dream up different scenarios and I think about what if. So I was thinking about something specific this morning. I was doing one of those what if exercises. If this happens, what should I be doing? And the idea is, in your personal life, is to have an idea of what do you want, what does the perfect situation look like for you? For example, if I decide I want to work here and maybe own a holiday home and travel, then what I need to do is to work on what are the steps that I need to work on to achieve that. But my vision is a very simple thing. This is what I want. I want to have a holiday home where I can travel to on a regular basis. And these are the type of things you think of. And in business, it's exactly the same thing. You've got to come up with an idea of what you want to create. And that is your vision. So what do you want to create? What does it look like? If you're in retail, is there a business out there that you've seen that you admire? Maybe that's going to be your benchmark. You're going to work on creating that. Think about the employees you're going to have working for you. Think about your inventory and the stuff that you're going to be selling. Think about that and create an idea. And even a better idea is to put on a board. You've heard of people creating vision boards and how this really helps people achieve. And you can do the same thing for your business. Because I know when I first launched this current business that I have, first launch, what I did was I did exactly that. And I'm not the most creative person. I'm not even, I can hardly draw. But this helped me visualize the business. So I actually made a graphic of what I wanted my business to look like. And it really helped me focus on what I wanted to create. And it's really, really interesting how this develops. The other thing I realized, even after doing this for so many years, is that your business vision changes. The direction you're going into, the direction you want to go in changes depending on situations. For example, the last 3 years with COVID, our focus was specifically on online stuff. So that was our focus. We only focused on producing online content, on running webinars, doing those type of things. Now we're moving to, I want to run some live events. So there's another process. Running live events is the easy part, making that decision. This is the idea. I want to run live events. To make those live events successful, that's the important part. That's where the planning comes in. But you've got to almost like dream up these ideas or come up with an idea of what you're going to be creating. And one of my favorite examples of a business vision is Elon Musk. Elon Musk made this decision that he wanted to change the cars that we drive from using fossil fuels to electric cars. So that was his vision. And it's really interesting how this has developed over the years to the stage now that in Europe they've announced by 2035, everybody will have to have an electric car. And it was this one person's vision. And you've got to understand the power of vision is when a business owner, when a person decides this is the direction they're going to go in, it's amazing how things can happen. The other thing that you've got to be very careful of is I always say that most business owners have ADD. And when I say ADD, I mean, it's only the best way I can explain it because I don't know what the medical terms of ADD are, but we get quite easily distracted. And we've got to be very, very careful then. What you want to try and do as a business owner is come up with a clear vision of what you're going to be doing. And then you want to focus on that thing. So don't get too easily distracted. And I've seen this with many business owners over time. Actually, I was thinking of a business owner now. I met her maybe 6 months ago or so. And she was involved in education. And then there was a conference in November last year, and she went to this conference. And at this conference, I mean, this was like a trade event. At this event, she decided to build an online app for students at school. And to me, it just seemed like a distraction. That's all it seemed to me, like a distraction. You were going in this direction, you saw this shiny object at this conference, and then you change direction. And you've got to be very, very careful of that. So once you decide, this is what I'm going to do, what you want to do is you want to focus on achieving that vision. And it's important that you do that. So understand that you've got to have clarity. One of the questions here is, how do I deal with a special needs daughter and a retired husband with cardiac problems while trying to work from home? You know, one of the things I don't proclaim to do is to know everything. I don't proclaim to know that. And I can relate to some of the challenges you're going through. I think running a business, even when you're very healthy, is very, very difficult. I think running a business when you don't have no responsibilities is very, very difficult. Running a business when you have, for example, a special needs daughter and a husband that has heart problems, I think is a big, big challenge. I must be honest. And I don't have a simple answer for you because I'm not in that situation. So I can't relate to that because I'm not in that situation. So I can't advise you on that, and I wish I could, but I can't advise you on that. But what I do think will help in that scenario is to try and come up with a solution. That's really what you want to try and do, is try and think about, this is the scenario, this is the challenge I've got, and how am I going to deal with it? And sometimes there are answers, and sometimes they aren't. I think that's just the reality in life, is that sometimes some of these things are really difficult to deal with. So I empathize with you because that's a very, very difficult situation to be in. I know just, running a business without having those two challenges for me is very challenging. And I've seen it even with parents that have children that need to take care of their children and still run a business. And I've seen how difficult that can be. So I empathize with you. So having a very clear business vision and focus is exactly what you want to be doing. And again, I just want to repeat some of the stuff we discussed on Tuesday. What is this business vision thing? Remember, I like to explain it as a dreaming, thinking into the future and looking into the future and saying, this is what I want to create. And the reality is that sometimes that image that you want to create is not perfect, it's not clear, but you've got to be realistic. And it's happened to me quite a few times over the years where I'll get somebody in one of my training programs and they want to open, I don't know, a health center. And I'll say to them, have you opened a health center before? And they say no. And they don't have training in that. And I'm not saying they can't achieve that. All I'm saying is that I think you need to be reasonable. Whatever you're going to be doing, you need to be reasonable. Do you have the skills? Do you have the capacity? Do you have all of those things to be able to do it? So imagine your business in 5 years' time, and we discussed this on Tuesday. What will it look like? Where will it operate? How many people will it employ? Here's a very good example. When we first started BizLaunch, that was one of my goals. That is one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to work where I am, but I also wanted to work in different countries. And so I worked in really interesting places in the Caribbean, Croatia, Namibia, and different parts. But that didn't just happen by chance. It was a process, or it was part of my vision. It was part of what I wanted to achieve. And I think it's a very, very powerful thing is when you make a decision as a human being. So even when it comes to your business, every one of us on this webinar have different scenarios. We have different situations. We have different family situations. We've got to decide for ourselves, how would we like it to operate? For example, you might say to me, no, well, you know what? I don't want to be operating in different parts of the world. I just want to be running my business out of my basement so I can take care of my family. And that is exactly the choice you need to make. You need to make the choice that works for you. And I think that is the key thing. The third thing you got to think about is, do you want to employ people? Because this is really, really important. Because if you decide that your future business is going to employ people, what you've got to try to do from the early stages of your startup is to create systems, create processes so that people can work. Because usually, and not always, but usually we'll start off a business as a solopreneur, then we'll start growing from there. And if you're in retail, often you'll start on your own, maybe you and a family member and maybe 1 or 2 employees. And then as your business grows, you will employ more people. But that could be your decision. You might decide, for example, not to employ people. And these are some of the decisions you need to make. And they're going to influence everything you do. Because I find what happens is when you start thinking about employing people, you're almost always in this recruitment process. I know I've been like that over the years. I'm always recruiting. Even when I don't need a seminar presenter or webinar presenter or whatever it is, I'm always recruiting and trying to identify people to help us grow our business. So these are some of the things you want to think about. Then we go through the planning process. And I know for a lot of people, this can be quite a stressful thing, because when somebody says to you, I want you to create a business plan, some of us get anxious. The reality is that most of these programs, doesn't matter which program it is, they will ask you to create a business plan. And you've got to understand that, saying you can't do it is not the solution, because then it leaves you out of all these programs that you could potentially participate in. So you've got to go through the process. And my advice to you is, for example, if you're going to a bank or if you're going to one of these programs in Ontario, for example, we got the Summer Company program, we got the Starter Company program, we've got the Digital Main Street program, we've got the My Main Street program. We've got quite a few programs. So when you apply for those processes, I would encourage you to ask them for their system, their structure, their process that they use, because there's no standard way of creating a business plan, in my opinion. Different people have different ways of doing things. I have that long form format that some of you maybe have seen me speaking about in some of my webinars. And then I have the short one that I shared with you last week. Not last week, on Tuesday, I shared with you that simple one-page model that I use. And then there's another one that you maybe have heard is the business model canvas. There's the lean canvas. There's so many different structures. I don't mind which one you use, actually. The key thing is, if you're using it for yourself, use the one that relates mostly to you and that you understand. If you're using it for a bank or an investor, whatever it is, try and understand what they like using. What template do they use? And I think that's my best advice to you, because all of us have different ways of doing this. So this is that template I showed you on Tuesday. It's very, very simple. It identifies your problems and opportunities. It helps you identify what products or services you're going to supply to satisfy those opportunities and problems, what your value proposition is, who your target customers are, and your marketing plan. All of these things are core things that you should be thinking about on an ongoing basis. So I almost want you to think of the planning process for your business, in terms of this document that I have on the screen, as something that's dynamic. It's dynamic, it's changing. As your business changes and evolves, this document is going to change and evolve. So I encourage you to maybe put it up on a wall or keep it on your desktop, on your computer. And as you identify opportunities, as you identify problems, you want to come up with solutions for that. And those are the type of things you want to think about. And you almost want to create this habit. Opportunities come up, problems come up, you write them down, and then you create products and services. So almost like, if any of you have ever done programming or have looked at flow charts, we use that process. If this happens, then you do this. Then you do this. So it's almost like a step-by-step process. I mean, when I put on the screen, it's like this, but you can imagine it, with headings and then lines underneath. And that's the way I want you to think about it. So identifying opportunities. What are the opportunities open to your business now? Every single one of us need to think about that. For some of us, it's going to change the direction of our business. For others, It's not going to change the direction of our business at all. We're going to keep doing the same thing we've always done. And that's okay. If what you're doing is the right thing, you want to keep doing that. The next thing you want to think about is what products and services you're going to create. So I've identified there's a need for seminars and training programs, in-person live seminars and training programs. What are products or services I'm going to create? And then I'll start thinking about things, topics I'm going to present, how long they're going to be, all of those type of things I start thinking about. And that's the way I want you to think. Or let's use another example. Let's say your profit margins on your business last year were too low. I don't know if any of you listen to the financial news, but every day different companies are publishing their financial results. And one of the things that I see quite a commonality now is people are saying that they're expecting the first quarter of 2023 to be a little bit slower. So these are the type of things you need to understand, that could be the same challenge that you have. That's what you may identify. You might say, you know what, business is going to be slow in the first 3 months of the year. Let us identify new products or services so that we can satisfy this need. Do you understand? So you almost can use it as a way of solving challenges in your business. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I encourage you, if, for example, you look at this list of questions and you don't agree with them, create your own. So almost create your own template. These are the challenges that we've identified. These are the products that we're going to create, and come up with your own set of questions and things like that. And I think that's a good strategy. But I think it's also important to create a template, because then you don't have to think these processes through. Templates make our lives so much easier. Well, they make my life so much easier. The third thing you want to think about is your value proposition. And I spoke about this on Tuesday, but it's really, really important. If you and I were sitting across the table drinking a cup of coffee, and I said to you, what makes your business unique? What makes your business different? What makes it special? If you don't have an answer, you have a problem. You've got to understand that. If you do not have an answer, what makes you unique, different, and special, what's going to happen is I'm going to look for a competitor that does the same thing as you and probably charges cheaper. And you've got to understand that value proposition is sometimes a difficult thing to identify, but it's something we need to work on. And some of you maybe could do a bit of research online. Let's say you're struggling with it. Maybe you could do a bit of research online, and there's value proposition exercises that you can do. It's people that have created these templates that forces you to think about your business model and identify what your value proposition is. The second thing you can do is speak to your customers and your employees. They can sometimes help you identify what differentiates your business from your competitors. And again, this is an ongoing process. So planning is not something that is static. I like to think of planning as something that's dynamic, that you're changing on a regular basis. The least I think we should be doing as business owners is every 90 days relook at what our plans were. And I think if you do that, I know for a fact your business will improve. Your margins will improve. Your promotions will improve. All of these things that you do will improve because you've got created a bit of structure. The next thing you want to think about is marketing. I think there are so many great tools we can use nowadays. I was looking at an example yesterday. I don't know if any of you have been using things like this chat AI that people are using, but I saw somebody yesterday sharing a very, very interesting example of how he uses AI, off-the-shelf AI, to create hundreds of articles. And it was really interesting because his business was the example he used was a very simple cleaning business, and how he used AI to create content for this cleaning business. And I thought to myself, for a lot of business owners, including myself, using something like AI to help us solve those little problems like creating content, because most of us on this webinar know that we should create more content, including myself. We know that we should be doing this. The reality is we don't always do it. So what you want to try and do is you want to come up with ways that you can do, to simplify the process. For example, if you own a bakery, you want to make sure that you set up a really simple camera, maybe even your iPhone, you take video regularly, and you post it on social media. If you if you've got new products coming into your store, you want to be loading that onto social media. If you've got, if you're in the fashion business and you brought in new inventory, and it's really getting into those habits of streamlining and making things so much easier for you. And that's really what marketing is about. Marketing is about doing. Marketing is not about, hoping for some promotion that you run and put an ad in the newspaper, and all of a sudden you've got hundreds of customers walking through your front door. Marketing is this whole process. It's every single thing we do in our business. The way we answer the phone, the way our employees, speak to our customers, how clean our store is. All of those things are marketing, and you don't always see them as marketing, but those things are part of your image, part of your branding that customers see. Your numbers section, a very, very important section that you need to work on all the time, updating and looking at your financial statements. If you've got an accounting software, printing management accounts every month, so you really know what you've got to do. And this process is really simple. I was speaking recently, maybe not recently, but last year, to my son, Marco, and he was speaking about a friend of his, and he was saying, he was speaking to his friend, and his friend was saying, I don't know if I'm making money or not. This guy was a musician. And he said, I know I do gigs and I have revenue and I have expenses, but I don't really know if I'm making a profit. And Marco said, I'm not sure exactly how much profit I'm making. And I said to him, well, it's really not that difficult. You just take your revenue, expenses, and then you have a running total. And it was a really simple formula. We did it on a spreadsheet, and then you knew what was going on. So here's the thing I want you to understand is that when we speak about numbers, often people think it's complicated. I don't think it's complicated at all, especially if you are a little bit financially literate. But even if you aren't, you can get an accountant to help you with this. To know what your monthly expenses are, what your gross profit margins are, what your break even is, what your cash flow situation is. All of these things are things that are important. And it doesn't matter what stage your business is at, doesn't matter how big or small your business is, these are your responsibilities. You're a business owner, they're your responsibilities. And the final thing is the people and processes. And I think this is so important. And if you haven't attended my webinar before on systems and processes, I encourage you to attend it, or just go to the My Main Street website. On there, I believe there's a recording of that webinar. Do you offer templates of the spreadsheet available at no charge? I'm not sure what that question is. I mean, if you're asking me, can you have this template that I've got? Sure, I can give you this template I've got. Just send me an email and I will send you this template, okay? When it comes to your marketing, again, there's a planning process. Firstly, you want to identify what your marketing goals are. You want to create a marketing calendar. You want to allocate budget and time, and then you want to measure the effectiveness. Again, these are things that you need to do, and it's a planning process and a very, very important one that you need to do. When it comes to your sales, I think you can plan too. Actually, a really, really important thing that you do. If you're the only salesperson in your company, I want you to think about, do you set yourself very, very clear goals? I mean, do you have very clear targets for yourself every month? Because one of the things that I've realized about business owners is that when we have a number to work to, for example, if I know I need to do 5 phone calls a day, then I've got a benchmark. I've got a number to work with. And humans work very, very well when they've got a target. It's like if you've ever saved money or done anything like that, is once you've got a number. I know, for example, in my walking, every single day, I've got a number that I have to achieve, and I do everything possible to achieve that number. And it's just, I mean, could the number be higher? Could it be lower? Absolutely. But because I've got a number, it's a really helpful thing. It's like a lot of these people, you'll see, for example, that use these step counters, and step counting, it's a silly little thing. Think of it. All it is this thing around your arm that counts how many steps you've taken. But it's really interesting how when they created these step counters, they came up with this number of 10,000 steps. And when you speak to people that are walkers, they will say to you, well, I've done my 10,000 steps, as though that is the benchmark. They don't say I've done my 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000. And I'm sure there are different targets, but it's when there's a number, and it's really interesting where that number came from, that 10,000 number. The Japanese came up with it, or that's how the saying goes. The Japanese came up with it to get people moving. But they realized is when you give people a number, then they've got something to work with. And it's the same thing if any of you run, or if you cycle, or whatever it is, when you know you've got a run for 5Ks or 5 miles, that's a specific number that you're working with. And I think when it comes to sales, you want to do exactly the same thing. And I would encourage you to set yourself specific goals when it comes to selling. What are your daily goals? What do I want to achieve today? What do I want to achieve tomorrow? What are my weekly goals? What are my monthly goals? What are my annual goals? I think it's very, very important that you do that. And the one thing you're going to realize very, very quickly, and many of us have gone through this exercise as business owners. When we first start out, I remember when I was first in retail, my goal was, I don't know, whatever it was, maybe $100,000 or whatever it was. And to me, that was just a big number. But I was always working to try and get to that number. And it's really interesting when you get to that number, whatever it is, 10,000, 5,000, 20,000, it's amazing how then you set a new number, and then you achieve that number, and then you set a new number, and you achieve that number. And it's a really interesting process, I found, especially in retailing, because then you almost like motivate yourself. Let's say last month was your best month and you did $5,000. This month now you want to do $6,000. And now what you're going to be doing is you're going to try and do different things. You're going to try and upsell, maybe run a few more promotions, maybe do a little bit more advertising, maybe more flyer distribution, whatever it is. But those numbers motivate you. And I want you to understand that. And I know even in my business, I've always set myself targets, and it's amazing. When you give yourself a number, I have an hourly rate that I like to charge clients, and that number is very, very high. But it's amazing how many times I've achieved it, and it's just that when you test yourself, if you're used to charging $50 and then you say, well, let me try and charge $60, and it's amazing the power of numbers for you. So I encourage you as a business owner that every single one of us, if we want to improve our sales, we got to be very, very specific. I need to sell $1,000 a day, or $500 a day, or 20 of these a day. My sales this week needs to be $5,000 or $3,000 or $2,000. And I promise you, you are going to be shocked how you start achieving these numbers. But the most important process here is the planning. You make the decision, you write down these numbers, and then you work to achieve it. The next thing you want to do when it comes to planning is focus on your financials. And one of the best ways of doing this is creating a cash flow forecast. If you haven't done anything else this year yet, I would encourage you this afternoon to sit down and go through your cash flow. Start off with what is your opening balance on your bank account, and then think of all that's going to happen over the next 12 months. And where are you going to get this information from? Well, you've got sales from last year, and you can project this year. So let's use, depending on the nature of your business. But usually, most of us, considering now that we have inflation, should probably be trying to get 7 to 10% more revenue than last year. So if you did $100,000 of revenue last year, you want to aim for $110,000 this year. And that is just to make the same amount of profit as you made last year. So understand that. So start off with working on your sales, start off by putting through your cash flow and putting through your expenses. And I promise you, for some of you, it's going to change your life. Why? Because now you're monitoring things. You're monitoring how much money is going to be in your bank. I also encourage you to use one of these for your personal life. I find one of the biggest challenges we have is that people don't manage their money. So they have got no sense of how much is flowing in every month, how much is flowing out every month. But if you know what those numbers are, you can do something about them. I had a very good example. Yesterday, I upgraded my internet. I upgraded my internet from 150, I never know what that is, to 1, which is the highest 1 gigabyte one, but I don't even know what it is. Anyway, but the point was that my monthly fee went from $110 down to $70. And I mean, that's not a lot of money, but it's $500 a year. And this is the key thing that you understand, is that once you have a number, you can then adjust it. But I know, for example, that I'm saving $500. If I save $500 in my business, that means for the next 12 months, to make the same profit, I need to make $2,000 less of revenue to justify that number. And I'm in the service business. If you're in the retail business, you need to make $5,000 of revenue to pay $500. So Donna says, is this template you'll send out, does it automatically do the formulas? So Donna, I will send you this template if you email me. Okay, so if you email me, I'm going to put my email here and I will send it to you. Okay, it automatically calculates it. You can change it and things like that, but you still got to put the numbers in. None of these things work without you putting numbers in. So I've shared my email address there with you. Okay, then I showed you this on Tuesday, but it's a doing thing. You know, me sharing with you on Tuesday and saying to you, you need to know what your break even is all very well, but if you don't do anything about it, if none of you after Tuesday's webinar went to your office, sat down and calculated what your break even was, that was a waste of a learning opportunity. So I want you to go and calculate this. I want you to calculate, I want you to make mistakes, and if you don't understand it, speak to your accountant and they'll help you do it. But then again, you've got a number. I need to make $10,000 of revenue every month to be able to pay all of my expenses and a salary for myself and whatever I need to do. But again, you're giving yourself a number, and then you can plan. If I need to make $10,000 of revenue a month and I charge $100 an hour, this is how many hours I need to work. Do you see what I'm saying? If I'm in retail, if I need to make $10,000 a month and my profit margins are 20%, I need to make $50,000 of revenue to be able to cover that. And it's really important that you understand this, because I find, and I've seen this many times over the years, is that people make emotional decisions. I'll see it all. Walk past businesses and I think to myself, you never thought that through, did you? You just assumed you'd love to open that type of business. You open that type of business and now you're stuck. And this is something you've got to be very, very careful of, is sometimes we make emotional decisions, then we get stuck in a situation. And I've seen this happening so many times over the years. When I say to people, you need to create a business plan, they say, oh, but you know what, I'm too busy, or I don't have time, and things like that. And I think to myself, you know what? If you create a business plan and you fail, at least you can say, well, I tried everything. If you don't create a business plan, then you fail, and you know what? You really didn't get the basics right. The basics of building a successful business is you want to build a profitable business. To build a profitable business, you need to know what revenue you need to generate. You need to know how you're going to generate leads. All of these things are the basics of building a profitable business. So if you didn't do it, you can blame whatever you want. You can blame COVID, you can blame the economy, you can blame whatever it is. And I've seen this, especially over the last couple of years, and I think it's going to happen over the next two or 3 years, is people are going to have very valid reasons why their businesses didn't succeed. But a lot of those businesses were not good businesses in the first place. That's what I believe. So what you want to try and understand as a business owner is, what problems are you solving? What products are you creating to solve those problems? Who your target market is? And these type of things you need to ask yourself over and over again, because that's the way we understand things. What marketing tools are you going to use? If you're going to finance your business, where's the money going to come from? What are your sales forecasts to your competitors? All of these things are really important questions that you need to solve and answer for. I thought I had another, let me just go back to this. So here's something I wanted to discuss. Actually, this is why I was wondering, why did I have this in the slide? Now I remember why. Every now and then, you as a business owner, and remember, if you've got any questions, and I noticed there haven't been many questions today. Last week, there were lots of questions, not so many today. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But if you've got any questions, just post them in the chat. But the reason I put this on the slide, I'm going to tell you now why. One of the things that very, very often happen when we're small business owners is we have to pitch our business. So basically, we've got to either go to family members, friends and family, or we got to go to the bank, or we've got to go to some of these government programs. And for these programs, these are the type of things these people are looking for. And I'll give you the example. If any of you ever watch Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, I want you to think of that scenario. And some of you will never be in that situation. You will never be in that situation where you have to stand in front of dragons or sharks or whatever it is to pitch your idea. But really, at the end of the day, you are pitching your idea all the time. I know, for example, this morning, I sent through a proposal to somebody that for a project in Colombia, in South America, and I know that I have to give them reasons why they should be choosing me, okay? And this is going to happen to you often. Another scenario, for example, let's say there's a prime spot. There's a prime spot on your main street that you really want to get into, or into a mall in your area or something like that. Here's the thing you got to understand. As a landlord, I want tenants that are going to succeed, because then it's a win-win. They make money and I get my rent every month. So this for me is really, really important. And very, very often business owners will come to me and they'll say to me, you know, I tried and get the site and I didn't. And the reason they didn't is very, very simple often, is because their proposal wasn't what the landlord was looking for. And I've seen this many times, actually, especially when they high profile sites. I know, for example, stations, train stations and things like that will often put out RFPs or RFQs or whatever it is, requests for proposals, and they'll try and determine who's the right person for the site. And I want you to understand that. So I almost want you to think about it, is that very, very often you are pitching your idea to a landlord or to a banker to lend you money or whatever it is, and trying to identify what motivates them. And I'm going to tell you, these are the things that motivate them. The first thing that motivates any investor, including myself, I run a fund with my sons, a angel fund, where we invest in startups. And every now and then I'm tempted to invest in small businesses. But let me tell you what the challenge is. The challenge is that they are not organized. So as much as they need the money, as much as they need the investment, the money, they need the guidance and the mentorship, as much as they need that, they are not ready. And this is their downfall. Because they don't plan. I can think of a business now that really needs money and needs funding. And she will not get it. And the reason she will not get it is because she's disorganized. The first thing investors want to do. Okay, so here's a question from Ishani. When you run an ice cream business, you make money in the summertime. Absolutely. How do you manage your expenses in the wintertime? That's a really good question. And this is how you solve that problem, is when you create your break even, you calculate your break even on 12 months. So you operate your business for 12 months and you've got to calculate all those expenses. Then you calculate how many ice creams you need to sell in the summer to justify those expenses. That's the way you do it. Or if you're lucky, you can negotiate some type of pop-up for ice cream. But the ice cream business is a very, very good example, actually, is that if you don't calculate your break even, you've got a problem. Because in the summer, you're very busy. And in the winter, you still sell ice cream in the winter, but you're not as busy. So there's a very good example, Ishani, of a person thinking, well, going to the beach, for example, and seeing thousands of people and thinking, all these people will buy ice cream. which is probably correct. What happens in the winter? And usually what happens with these type of businesses is they'll scale down in the winter and then they'll ramp up in the summer. I know we had that, for example, when we used to sell peanuts. In the peanut business, you sell mostly in the winter. So what we do is we'd scale down in the summer and we'd ramp up in the winter. What did that mean? Is we'd reduce our expenses in the winter because we can't get rid of our expenses. Because if you rent premises from a landlord for an ice cream store, they're not going to say, wow, you know what, only pay us in the summer when you're selling ice cream and not in the winter. So calculating your break even, which is a very good example, an ice cream business, you would do the same. But think of there's lots of businesses like that, landscaping businesses, people that sell plants in nurseries and things like that. You know, all of these type of businesses, they are seasonal businesses. The challenge they've got is they seasonal businesses, they do most of their revenue in a specific amount of time, but they've got to justify the rent for the rest of the year. Another very good example is where the term Black Friday comes from. I don't know if any of you are aware, but Black Friday means that from that day onwards, they've got profit. Before that, they don't make profit. So not only is the ice cream business got that challenge, it's a lot of businesses. But again, you realize that if you don't create a plan to test the viability of that ice cream business, you're basically screwed because you made the decision, an emotional one, based on selling ice cream in the summer, okay? So what problem are you solving is a key thing that investor wants to know. I know that's always the question I want to know is what problem are you solving? So usually it starts like this. I'll give you an example. My son Daniel recently built this app, this discount app. And the reason he came up with this, he had a problem in his e-commerce business. He identified that people entering codes for discounts was an extra step in the process of buying his product, which took a bit of time. So what he did is, this was his problem. He came up with a solution by building this app. And that is exactly what investors want to listen to. What problem did you identify and what solutions did you come up with? So if any of you were pitching your idea to a family member, to a banker, to an angel investor, to a venture capitalist, that's what they're looking for. They're trying to understand that. So if you've tried and raised money for your business, okay, and you've struggled, it's because you haven't been very clear on this. You haven't explained to the listener what problem you've identified and why, for example, let's go back to the ice cream business, why you opened that ice cream business. What was the opportunity? What made you decide that the ice cream business was the right business to open on this site? And that is what we are looking for. You know, we're looking for the answer to that question is, and you may say, well, there's 5,000 people that walk past the store in the summer and there's no place for them to buy ice cream. Do you see what I'm saying? Then you've identified the problem and you've come up with a solution to that, okay? But that's not enough. That is not enough. That is just the problem you've identified. And this will happen to people often. You know, I know, for example, I was in South Africa in December, and one of the things I realized is, you know, there's lots of fruit there, wonderful fruit. So one of the opportunities is to import this to the colder countries in Europe and North America. But that's just a thought. That's just an idea. The details come in the planning. Do you understand? And a lot of people come up with ideas. You know, people will say to me, I'll be walking around and people say, oh, well, I've got this great idea. Well, great ideas don't make money. It's the application or it's the doing part of great ideas that make money. So identifying the problem and coming up with a solution is only part of that planning process. You know, nobody's going to get excited about ideas. And this is often what will happen. People say, I've got a great idea that I'm trying to raise money for. Or if you're an existing retailer, you know, going to a bank and saying, I've got this great idea to open a bakery, you know, or add a bakery onto my business, or to start making donuts, or to start whatever. That's the idea. The next thing they want to try and identify is who's your ideal customer. So if you're coming to me as an investor, that I'm going to invest in your business, I want to know that you've thought through this. Because if you say things like this to me, everybody needs our product, I get a bit anxious. Because I'm thinking, maybe everybody needs your product, but that's not the way you're going to survive in business. You're going to survive by being very, very clear on who's going to buy your product. That's the key thing. So if you're going to sell ice cream, are you going to sell premium ice cream? Or are you going to sell target kids? Or are you going to target families? What is the plan? Do you see what I'm saying? Because those are different marketing plans. If you're going to sell a premium ice cream, you're going to sell it more expensive. Maybe the store needs to be more upmarket, wherever it is. If you're going to sell to kids, well, then maybe you then have to think about the colors that you're going to have. Do you see what I'm saying? All of these things impact your business model. What is your value proposition? And when somebody comes to me with an idea, like an ice cream store, for example, now that you gave me that idea, I'm going to use that right through. If you say to me, Andrew, I'm going to open an ice cream store on the main street, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is, what makes you different? Because you have competitors. If you're on a main street, I can go and buy ice cream at the local supermarket. I can go to the convenience store at the gas station. I can go to McDonald's to buy ice cream. All of those are places that I can buy ice cream and consume it. What makes your ice cream different? What is going to take me from, instead of going to the local garage convenience store, bring you into your store and buy ice cream? That's what you need to do. That's what you need to tell me about, because that's the thing that differentiates you. Now, the other question you want to try and identify is why, with same question again, why should I buy ice cream from you rather than McDonald's? And you might say, no, but but McDonald's is just whatever. I don't even know if they sell ice cream anyway. But you say, well, McDonald's just sells whatever, soft serve with things inside. We're going to sell special ice cream. And then I say, well, what do you mean special ice cream? No, these are going to be handmade ice cream, or these are going to be vegan. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what differentiates you. Okay. So this is the idea process. Whenever you come up with an idea, or you want to expand something in your business, let's say you're a retail business and you want to add ice cream to it, or you want to add a bakery, this is the thought process you need to go through. And if you do this every single time, it's going to work really well for you. If you're trying to raise money for your business, this is the way to do it. Because people like me want to know the answers to these questions. So almost think of it as a pitching competition. I'm pitching to Andrew because he's going to invest $2,000 in my business. The next thing I want to know is, how are you going to bring customers into your store? So let's say that ice cream store again. Okay, so you're opening an ice cream store. What are you going to be doing? And then you start speaking about, maybe, for example, you're going to do up the front of the store, very attractive. And I say, what does that mean? And then you show me examples. You've traveled around the world. You've seen beautiful ice cream stores. You've taken photographs, and it attracts. Then you might say, oh, then we're going to have sampling outside the front door. You know what I'm saying? So you start going through the specifics of what you're going to be doing. We're going to have a launch. You're going to invite, we're going to use all of those type of things. Is you want to be thinking through them, and it's very, very important. How much revenue do you need to generate every month? So let's go back to that ice cream store again. How much sales do you need to generate every month to pay the rent, to pay all your expenses, to pay your salaries? And have you thought about the off-season, for example? So these are some of the things you need to think about. As a healthcare professional, home care agency, new clients usually start service at the beginning of the month. Can I plan on a monthly basis, or can I do it daily, weekly, as you suggested? You know what? You can do it daily. You can do it weekly. Really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Let's go back to the example of doing the cash flow. If you looked at that cash flow forecast I shared on the screen, it shows cash flow every month, but you can do it every week. I know when I was in retail, I used to break up the year into 52 weeks and then do cash flow every week. So all of these things are adaptable. Nothing's cast in stone. And I want you to understand that is, it doesn't matter, even templates and all these type of things that we create, they are there to be changed to suit your business. Okay. So that's what I would recommend. All right. What is your opinion on signing a franchise business? Scary word, royalty fees. What are the pros and cons? Okay, that's a really good question. So let me just explain something to you before I answer this question. Let me explain to you how franchising works. Franchising works like this. Basically, you're buying the rights from, let's use the McDonald's idea. So let's say McDonald's was an ice cream franchise. Okay, so you would approach McDonald's, you'd say to them, listen, I'm interested in opening a McDonald's ice cream store. They'd say, sure. To open a McDonald's ice cream store, it's going to cost you $200,000. You say, okay. Then what they'll do is they will usually help you find the site. Or some franchises, they'll get you to find the site. They'll help you find the site, and then they'll train you up, and then you'll run the business. And then every month, you will pay them a percentage of your revenue, okay? And that depends on the franchise, okay? So here's the advantages of franchise. The advantage of franchise is you're starting off with a brand, okay? So you start off, there's a brand, people know who McDonald's ice cream is, and you're starting with that. The disadvantage of a franchise is that you've got a high startup cost. You have to pay for their business model, okay? So that's the first thing. The advantage of doing it on your own is the startup cost will be lower. The disadvantage is you're going to spend money attracting people to your store. And you've seen this. I mean, I was reading this week, for example, they opened Tim Hortons in Pakistan, and there's a lineup around the block. I mean, in a poor country, and there's a lineup around the block. Why? Because people are attracted to franchise models. They're also very, very good at advertising and things like that. So here's a good question. For a startup that needs an office space to provide services, what do you think about renting a shared space or space instead of renting an office? If I was starting a new business, I would rather share space first, which is not the most convenient thing, but that's where I start. Once I reach break even, and then basically once you're making money, then move to your own space. That's my advice to you. The simplest way is to move into your own space from day one, but that's very expensive. So that would my advice be to you. Okay, how much revenue do you need to generate? Where will the money come from to finance your business? So this is a really key thing. Let's go back to the ice cream example. And is one of the things that people are going to ask you, whether it's a franchise or a non-franchise. If it's a franchise, they're going to say, how are you going to raise the $200,000? And obviously, they sometimes have relationships with banks. If you're going yourself, the landlord's going to ask you the same question, is how are you going to raise the money, okay? Because it's in their interest. They got to get their rent every month. Then you got to go through your sales forecast. With a franchise group, they will help you calculate that. With a non-franchise group, you're going to have to do it yourself. Who are your main competitors and who are your mentors and advisors? But here's the thing I want you to understand, is that every single one of these questions that I asked you or showed you on the screen are questions that investors want to know, are questions that bankers want to know, are questions that family members are going to invest in your business. But the most important person that benefits from this research and this exercise is you. And never forget that. So the business planning process that you go through benefits you the most. The second thing I advise you to do is to take this plan to somebody that's got experience in the industry or is an experienced business owner and let them evaluate that. So if you've got an existing retail business and you want to open a bakery or an ice cream store in that business, go to another business owner and say, this is my idea. What do you think about it? Can you look at the business plan? And then you've got a second opinion. And that's the advantage of planning. You've got somebody that you can give your idea to and say, what do you think of this idea? And this is why I encourage all business owners to use the business planning process. Is it a painful thing to do? It can be. But the amount of things that you learn could be the difference between success and failure. I don't know why I'm getting tongue-tied today. The final thing is, I want you to understand, building a business is very, very difficult. But I want you to understand it is also one of the most rewarding things you will ever do. And it's really, really rewarding. So if you've got a great idea, you've created a business plan, you've taken your business plan to a couple of people, they've tested the idea, they've given you their opinion, and you believe it's going to work, I encourage you to persevere, because I think building a business is one of the greatest things you will ever do, but also one of the most difficult things. And retailing can be very, very rewarding if you do it properly. If you don't do it properly, it can be a pain in the ass. All right. So thank you very much, everyone, for today's session. I will be back on Tuesday at 2 p.m. to teach you something else. Sign up for those webinars. Encourage other business owners to sign up for those webinars. Keep learning, and hopefully you can build a successful business and become a success story, because that is my wish for every single one of you. Use this information. It absolutely works. Have a great day and see you on Tuesday. Thank you very much, everyone.